Thank you. That's a great start, right? No tech challenge. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm so excited to see you all, first of all, here in the room as we are coming in physical format. It has been 2 years of too much of Windows 3x3s and whatnot, right? And I'm sure you all are equally excited for the same. I think we have a great panel of speakers across the industries. And I know we are missing one of the speakers, Prem from JK, and he was not sick, so definitely don't want to expose himself and others as well. So, but we have a very strong panel which we will be taking, and especially the topic, right, which is about building a learning ecosystem that really delivers long-term business impact, right? A lot of keywords here, right? But then we will unclutter a lot of this. I definitely have created some of very specific questions because I've kind of interacted with most of the speakers here in various settings. So let me quickly start. And after we have gone through really 2 years of uncertainty, disruption. I don't want to say the P word at all, and I'm sure you want to get away with that as well. But we have started seeing so much of hybrid scenarios, hybrid workplace, and it was very different in different industries, right? That has created a lot of opportunities, and that has also created a lot of challenges right across. So my first question goes to, probably I'll start with Aditi. Aditi, you're right next to me. In terms of how really it created those opportunities and challenges, from a learning programs and learning systems perspective. So
good afternoon, everyone, and I'm really happy to be here with you today. Good to see so many professionals from all across industries and sectors. So welcome to all of you. So thanks, Ankur, for the question. Now, last 2 years, what we've seen is a huge amount of digital adoption. All of you would be doing some digital transformation project that you may be driving in your organization. But what technology or digitization has done in the L&D space, it's almost like and you must have heard the word ecology. It has created an ecosystem where functions, departments, jobs, people all live in a very connected world. So that's number one. That's the opportunity that has happened with the digital adoption. The second thing that has happened is maybe even before the start of the last 2 years, we would have seen mostly a very unidirectional approach to learning. But what has happened is we have now seen a multi-directional approach to learning, and that opportunity has been created by technology. Multi-directional approach is possibly, you would have seen immersive learning, you would have seen blended learning, all coming into the picture. The third opportunity that has been created will be, a large amount of the learning culture, and even to the last person standing in your teams, you would have been able to connect with them through digitization in the L&D space. But there are also drawbacks, and we cannot, afford to let go of sight of that. I would see that the first drawback is these are expensive, and I'm sorry, Skillsoft is here, but these are expensive. There is obviously a limitation of the budgets, and that creates some kind of impediment. The second is, very importantly, is sometimes there is a digital fatigue that comes. Too much is also not good, right? And I think the third and the most important is, while when we started the whole digital transformation in the last 2 years, what has happened is when we started taking and adopting this, probably we did it as a necessity of the pandemic. But what we need to now realign is absolutely realign it to the now new norm, where the strategic vision of the organization need to be adapted to the new technology. So that's what I had to say, Ankur.
No, thank you, Aditi. Very insightful. Ashok, what do you think around the opportunities? And you come from a lot more high tech, consumption of technology a lot earlier than pandemic, right? So what are your views on that?
So actually, COVID threw rather than an opportunity, it was a necessity for us. When COVID hit us, suddenly business went down drastically, and we had a lot of people being in IT industry. We call it as people on bench. People were not having jobs at that time, and Immediately after the first wave, when things started bouncing back, we realized that the skills required have drastically changed. It's no longer the same skills which are required prior to COVID are required now. And we had two options: fire all those people on bench and hire new lot, or reskill and upskill those people into the new technologies required. So we took the second option, and I think that was the opportunity come necessity where we started doing this. Now the biggest challenge was that uh, as a learning culture, we are too much used to a classroom kind of learning, in person physical learning. But that option was not there. Now we look forward to our partners like Skillsoft and other online platforms like Udemy, Coursera's of the world, and thankfully they scaled up very fast. The quality of content which they provided was excellent, and we can actually use that and marry our necessity with that option available, and we could reskill all those people and deploy them within 6 months. So it started sometime in May, and by December time frame our bench was almost zero, and we were again hiring. Now when we started hiring, again the same problem, the same skills were not available in the market, and even if they were available, they are very very pricey. So we again had the option of hiring people with a subset of skill, reskill them, upskill them, and then deploy them. I think th- this basically it was a God thrown opportunity for on us, and we really lived up to it. And our learning hours per employee uh, increased from say 27 hours per employee per year to around 120 hours per employee per year. It's around 5 to 6 times increase.
Yeah, fantastic. No, thank you, Ashok, for sharing. That and how it really use that opportunity for the people. Bala, any other inputs which because your experience with Reliance and now with PI Industries, how you see this scenario working out?
Thanks, Ankur, and happy to be here. Really happy. After 2 years, getting to see a room full of people is looks nice. So I'm looking at it differently in the sense I think every organization, same with Reliance and PI, and like every other organization, we also had our set of challenges we had to adopt quickly, right? But I'm looking forward. I'm looking from here. Where do we go, right? And if I look at it, there are two sets of factors at play. One is as we go forward, there's a huge change in terms of the workforce itself, right? Whether it's diversity, whether it's from a generational perspective. So in 10 years' time, you would have 50% of people workforce would be millennials, right? Gen Zs would have started coming in. You would have gig in a bigger way. I think Deloitte had a recent study where they say 40% of global workforce would be gig. So that's another piece that will come into play. And more interestingly, almost 75% of workforce globally is going to be based either out of Asia or Africa. And that's going to be a huge shift from the way it is. So that's one. Second, of course, is the technology. One can't ignore, right? It's everywhere. But what it is also doing, interestingly, is automation is not just taking away jobs, but the very nature of jobs is changing, right? So you don't have, it has a huge impact on how you're going to do learning, particularly. Also, you have AI and ML available in a much more cheaper way today compared to what it was, say, 5 years ago. It used to cost about $2,500 per hour of AI ML skill that you would need. Today, it's down to about 1/10 of it. And therefore, data is easily available. So what it means for us as learning professionals and as leaders, right? First and foremost, it's about getting the organization ready from a future perspective. How do I quickly upskill my people? How do I get them future ready? That's the number one task and the biggest task that I think all of us are, as learning leaders, are grappling with. So hyper speed learning, that's one. The second shift or important thing is 10 years, 15 years back, a skills life cycle was you could learn a skill and it's going to be current at least for the next 5, 10, 15 years. Today, it's about 3 to 4 years on an average. So again, need to constantly upskill, constantly reskill organizations. And more interestingly, what it impacts is the leadership itself, right? So as L&D, if you will, you're tasked with getting leaders ready, getting leaders who are able to manage this pace of change, who are going to be able to create and manage a very agile business in a very, very disruptive environment. And that's going to be a huge ask. It's already an ask. And how do we as learning scale up and are able to deliver on that promise? I think that's the opportunity that really gets excited.
No, thank you, Bala. And what we have also realizing, I think, in the last 2 years is that the expectations and the conversations between an employee and employer, and you alluded to some of those points, each of you, has been changing, right? In terms of what an employee expect from an employer and what an employer also is expecting from their employee. And I think L&D or the skills becomes a very important factor there in between. So L&D plays a very important role. I believe HR and L&D, while and what I see is that, if you really look at L&D, and each of you talked about the importance of L&D and the technology, right, which is kind of coming, and we can't just underestimate this whole. So in looking at this point of view, what are the various trends which are evolving? And maybe Bala, you can start from that side, and I'll look forward for, especially in the future workplace perspective, what are the trends which you see coming out in this area?
So 2 or 3 things. First, in fact, even before I get into the trends, right? If you look at 20 years back, if I had to come to a conference like this, I'm going to be cut off from the workplace for the next 24, 48 hours till the time I'm out from work. So because you don't have access. And that started shifting the moment you had smartphones, you had BlackBerry messengers, etc. So you at least could stay connected in some form. At least you get a update at the end of the day, right? And today it's always on, right? I'm sure each one of you, it's no different. All of us are still connected. You're here physically, but you're also virtually somewhere else at your workplace. So that's a huge shift in how all of us are working. So it's not a future anymore, it's present in that sense. Second, as I talked about the generational shift, the diversity shift, that's going to happen and already happening. What it means for us from a learning perspective, and to a large extent, some of these shifts have already started happening or already happening, right? Bite-sized learning. So you need to, bite-sized learning is even more important when you look at gig workforce, because you can't say, hey, they are not my regular employees, I don't need to worry about them. They are still talent that are going to work with you, they need to be productive, right? So as learning departments, you can say, hey, they are not my workforce. So how do I, as the organization, ensure my every employee, whether it's employee on role or off role, right, are completely engaged, completely productive? And therefore, how do and at the same time, minimizing the time and cost that is going to be required to invest in each one of them.
Sure.
So bite-sized learning becomes extremely critical, so that make it available at the point of work. And that's where technology really comes into play, right? So for example, for us at PI, we are experimenting with AR, VR in a big way, wherein if I have a new machinery, do I really need to spend hours and hours training an individual, or can I give minimal training and put them on the field, give them an AR, VR glass, they go there and are able to operate the machinery safely, very importantly, right? Given that we are in a chemical industry. So able to do it safely, without any safety incidents, at the same time able to be productive. So to a large extent, I think that's going to be the impact.
Yeah, thank you. And coming to Ashok, I know that, the 2 keywords, the great resignation, the great shuffle. I'm sure most of you have heard it, right? Everybody heard it? Okay. So, and I know it has impacted some industries more, it has impacted some industries less, but there is a challenge which it created, right? These 2 phenomena. Now, I think, Ashok, I'll probably start with you here, that, how you really dealt with this, how you really felt from a continuous learning, which you kind of talked about a bit earlier, that there was a continuous learning which you were able to do, and engaging these talent, retaining these talent, right, and growing these talent. So how you were able to do that, and I know that SCL has done some great work there, being a big, looking at from a tech talent perspective, and that's where the most fire was, right?
So the mantra here is, we call it as PPP, triple P. So learning has to be pervasive, it has to be personalized, and it has to be productive. I think if you follow these three, and we have proven this with data, I'll throw some numbers also here, which shows that this resignation and engagement, these things can be handled much better. Now, when I say pervasive, it should be, I'll take you from what Bala said, bit-sized learning or bite-sized learning. So we had an initiative in HCL, especially for the leadership, where time is always a crunch. I don't have time is always an excuse for learning. So we called it as a 10 at 10. So what is the concept? Every day at 10 a.m., your calendar will be blocked for 10 minutes, and you will have a 10-minute module which you can learn, and it will be a monthly calendar, date-wise. You can pick up any date, click on that topic of your choice, learn for 10 minutes, and you're done with it. And I think that is that 10-minute slot. You can, although it is branded as 10 at 10, but you can do it anytime during the day. Whenever you're having a tea break, coffee break, WhatsApp break, you can actually do it. Now, second is personalize. So in the standard learning paradigm, you used to have a classroom where everyone has to learn the same thing, like a 4-year engineering degree. Whether you like it or not, in the first year you have to study mechanical, civil, everything. But today you don't need all that. So you need to have very, very personalized learning curriculum, curated curriculum. Someone need to understand what are your gaps, and just learn on those gaps. Why should you learn everything? And what is your business need? And third is, whatever you're learning, it should be productive. Productive in the sense, it should improve your productivity, either personally, professionally, or whatever is objective of learning. It should definitely help you in that. If you follow these three, I think your learning is going to be much more impactful. And with this, we actually set up a learning culture in these last 2 years, which increased our learning like anything. And there was at the end of 1.5 years when this resignation started hitting us, there was a huge hue and cry from traditional management mindset that probably we are losing people because we are overtraining them, and we are training them for the market. And I think that was the apprehension. So we thought, okay, let's look at the data. So we analyzed the data of the people who had tried it and people who are staying with us, and then we looked at their learning hours data. To our utter surprise, people who were retained and people who were at the people who left our organization, there was a 10% reduction in the people who had gone through those learning engagements, which means people really felt obliged to the organization that we gave them the opportunity to learn those upcoming new skills and get deployed in the organization, and they really appreciated it and stayed with us. And people who left probably were those people whom we could not give those opportunity, or who did not take that opportunity. I think this 10% reduction in attrition, if the scale at our company is, which is roughly around 2 lakh employees, is 20,000 people a year. It's a huge profit, direct margin in the balance sheet.
No, absolutely, and I think it's not just about training them, but really getting them at the right place at the right time where they're a lot more engaged, right? And I think that's very great data which you can share. How did impact in your commodity exchange perspective? I know you have across the talent.
So just very few people will be probably aware about how an exchange operates, but we say we are a technology-driven finance organization, okay? And our trading platforms are really world-class because we really do tie up with MIT and get our trading platforms done. 30 to 40% of our demography is technology, Ankur. Now, what we have approached is that, frankly, we rebooted the way we approached our whole L&D environment. We partnered with Skillsoft, and what we also did was we made it completely academy framework of learning, which means hardcore hard skills, which less on, of course, soft skills continue to be there, but focuses on real techno-functional skills. And we did this through the academy framework, which we call the NCDX group. We have a group company set up, and we did it through the academy and hosted it in our digital platform. But one thing we also introduced, which helped us a lot, it reminds me of a saying by Phil Collins. You may have heard the singer. In teaching, in learning you will teach, and in teaching you will learn. So we have something called the NCDX Collaborative Learning Club, which is nothing but a social learning mechanism by which our employees also get an opportunity to teach others the real critical skills. So that's what we are doing to kind of disseminate critical skills and retain niche, because agri-talent, you'll be aware,
Right.
is very niche in India. So we can't afford to let go of our employees, and that's what we are trying to do.
Agreed. And I think so importantly, creating that whole culture,
Yes.
learning culture, and giving them not just to learn, but teach and then learn.
Yes.
I think great learning up there. So while we kind of talked about some of these areas, I think I probably pick up something which Ashok talked about more on the personalization of learning, because as we are really trying to engage these people, upskilling these people, I think personalization becomes a very important area. And when I say personalization, it's an ever-growing area, because personalization started maybe a decade ago or more. But the definition of that personalization is keep on changing, right? Because you expect more and more and more and more personalization to come in. We have been started, I'm sure most of you, when it started, it was a library of content which is available. And then it became, okay, curated some title-wise descriptions, then it started becoming role-wise descriptions. We started creating more journeys up there for you have to go from point A to point B, what Ashok was alluding to, and that's where you create. But now, even when you have two people in the room and with the same roles and same aspirations, probably their skill level on each of these specific areas might be very different, right? The personalization is going, always expecting more and more up there. So how you really make sure that that person is effectively spending that 30 minutes versus 3 hours on a particular small topic as well. So looking at that kind of a scenario of personalization and the expectation, because we are in the Netflix world, so obviously everybody feels that the personalization has to be at that level, the learning experience has to have that level. Now looking at that, it needs to also create not just from adoption but business impact perspective. So any of you, whoever want to start, want to talk about a personalization a bit more, and how you really dealt with it, how you are seeing the benefits of it.
I'll just say
Yeah,
a few words
please.
maybe after that. Okay, so as I mentioned Ankur, we have a complete academy framework of learning, and what we are doing now is one is, of course, we have the whole hyper personalization aspect to learning, which means that we have created learning tracks, which focuses largely on the whole behavioral competencies that we have, the framework that we have. The second part of the learning tracks, which is completely on as I mentioned to you, the critical skills, the hard skills, with the techno-functional skills. So that also we have, completely departmentalized functional frameworks. And what has happened in return is the aha moment for our learners. And I think what personalization has done is created a historical opportunity for our learners to move towards their natural abilities. And that is what has happened. And honestly, there is the hyper-personalization is in such a way that the notifications come to them saying that, you have clicked this, this learning. Why don't you navigate to this one, which is a step higher than a basic? It moves you to an intermediary, to an advanced. So that is what has happened. And what we have achieved in return is the metrics.
Got it.
So
Okay. Understand. So on very good point on the aha moment side. Any aha moments which Ashok, you or Bala have experienced from personalization perspective?
So in the personalization front, what we did is we created a learning framework which is called hire, train, and deploy. So when you need the resources and you need to hire from the market and they are not ready for the job, and you need to hire them and then train them. So what we do is we conduct a gap assessment as soon as they join, identify the gaps, and then curate a specific learning program for them. That learning program can be as short as 1 week, it could be as long as 6 to 8 weeks. Now, with that, you are able to deploy those people at the earliest, because depending on their gaps, you can actually fill only those gaps and make them learn. I think this created a huge business impact, and it's aha moment from the organization point of view rather than from the individual. In the financial year 2021, we saved $11 million using this initiative, and in financial year 2021-22, we could save $25 million using this initiative. So direct margin, bottom line impact. It's a real great aha moment for the organization in the current scenario.
Thank you. No, thank you. Those numbers are very, very encouraging in that way. Bala, from your side?
So couple of things. One is something that we did, and other thing which we are working on. So we kind of rejigged our entire values and operating model, right? And when we are doing that, we so for example, one of our values is creative, and a subset of it is ability to connect unseen dots, right? And so when we looked at it, it means very different. When you're talking about ability to connect unseen dots, it means differently for people in manufacturing at the operator level versus somebody who is in R&D sitting in and trying to discover a molecule, right? So very, very different things. So we kind of looked at each role, and based on the role, therefore, what is the impact it means, and therefore, based on therefore the impact, what is kind of the courses that one needs to go through. For example, if I look at someone in R&D, we were looking at lateral thinking and going deeper into and saying at the highest level, at the expert level, the guy because it's about creativity at that time. Whereas for someone in the plant, it's really about awareness level. And that's where an LXP comes into play, because it really helps you to personalize it based on the role, based on the individual. So that's one example that we did. But I think where we are trying to go now is kind of one step further. So we're saying not just at a role level, but at an individual level, right? Each individual has skills. So I could be at the same level or same role as somebody else, but my skill set is different from somebody else's skill set. And based on individual skill sets, therefore try and make things available. And and it's not just making available, but also the individual will be able to pull the right content for themselves. So it's still an experiment. We haven't really progressed much, but idea is try and look at it at a skill level at every individual person, and treat every individual as unique, and therefore make things available for each one of them.
No, the good news is that Skillsoft actually does that. So we have a skill benchmark, which actually, look at each individual and look at the skill levels for each of the journeys, and then you get served content depending on whether you really need 2 to 5 minutes, whether you need 30 minutes, whether you need more, and depending on how much you want to invest in yourself. Actually, the whole thing get created in the LXP platform for CPU. So, thank you. So I think all of you talked about a little bit on the outcome side, and if I look at the topic, is more about how to really get business outcome, because learning is not just about learning delivery. It's not about learning adoption these days, right? It is more about when you go hyper personalized. It is more about the business outcome, because you have to start really seeing that how I'll get ROI, or in whatever shape and form. Maybe ROI is a good word, bad word, but it has to create that impact. Now, when we really look at from a business impact perspective, what are the key things which you keep in mind when you really start creating this ecosystem? So each one of you can share your own views. You come from a very different background.
See, the business impact is the mantra. Without business impact, I think the learning department in any organization will remain a cost center, and which is a big pain. Because if you are a cost center, then for every money you spend, every dollar you spend, you have to go for approvals. So I think we changed that whole game. We rather than a cost center, we became a profit center. We literally measured the impact of each and every learning in terms of dollars, the dollars saved, dollars earned, and we could prove that with the X amount of investment in learning, we have created maybe 100x return. Now, I don't need to go for any approval for any learning investments. I always, whatever I have to invest, I just have to show what is the ROI in the terms of what is the impact I'm going to generate with this, and that's it. And that's the way our budgets are approved. And our budgets are actually, frankly speaking, not limited, because those get evolved over a period of time over the year. And it for each and every investment we have to make, we have to just show the ROI in terms of the impact generated, and that's it. We are done with that.
Good. I'm sure a lot of learning leaders will be connecting with you to get this model right in their organization, right? So be ready. Bala?
So we haven't gone the whole hog as Ashok has done, right, or HCL has done. But what we are trying to do is really look at impact, not just in dollar sense, but impact in terms of real feeling, right? For example, as an agrochemical company, we deal with our end customer is farmers. So a lot of our learnings and is directly with the farmer. So educating the farmer, ensuring the farmer understands what is the impact of how much pesticide I should be spraying or not spraying, right? And it has an impact ultimately on the end consumer, which is each one of us, right? So that is one level of, and it's a societal impact in a way. And that's one level of impact that we actually measure, saying how many farmers are we educating? How many farmers are actually understanding how to use our product correctly, right? And that's very key for us. And that's part of also our social responsibility. So that's one piece. The other piece, of course, is really around, am I touching every single individual through learning within the organization? And the easier said than done, very honestly, particularly when you have a lot of operators at the lowest levels. And I'm not talking just in terms of able to operate a machinery, but does every person understand both the hard skills as well as the soft skills? So emphasis is on both tracks and ensuring that people actually understand and are able to productively work. The impact that we measure really is around one, attrition. Second is engagement. Third is innovation for us, and that's key because we also are a huge R&D focused company and technology focused company. So those are three areas that we really measure our impact on learning.
No, thank you, Bala. And I know that the clock is clicking, and I have about 8-9 minutes left. So Aditi, very quickly, and then we will probably go in the room to get some questions from the audience as well.
So I'll keep it short. I'm aware we just have 7 more minutes left. So see, we are NCTX works, or rather is in the agri commodity space, which is very niche area, okay? And we have a huge responsibility to the nation, and because the investors' money are with us, and they have, we also ensure that there's a public, there's a huge amount of trust. So our employees, when they go, we have to ensure that our employees are skilled to deliver the awareness to investors. That is number one. Number two is that very importantly, we come across as a learning organization because everybody is into delivering training in the commodity space. So one is the knowledge skill, which is hard skill, as I keep saying. So which means how many positions, very very simply put, how many positions are we insourcing in the organization? What are the IJPs that has been floated? Simply, very simply, IJPs that has been floated, how many have you been able to fill through your lateral movements? Which essentially means that you have a fungibility of resources. So that, I think, is from an HR head perspective, I would like to see these metrics come in and as a business impact. And last but not the least, I think Ashok has also mentioned this before. As I mentioned, we have a lot of fresh talent coming into the organization. How productive and how soon can we make them productive from, and what's the turnaround time? Yeah. So those are a couple of points that I had to say.
Agreed. No, thank you. So we have about 6-7 minutes left. Audience questions? Yeah, please go ahead. Can we get your name and company and then ask the question?
Hi, nice to be here. My name is Kanyan. I'm from the Google Operations Center. So question for the panelists. I mean, great session, by the way. But one question that comes to my mind all the time, and we are in a technology enablement company from low to very high complex enablement, as everybody knows, Google. We spoke about hyper, you used the word hyper speed in learning, right? Does that not impact learner experience? I mean, are we as a learning fraternity deprioritizing learner experience and focusing on hyper speed of learning? That's the part A of the question. Part B of the question, we keep talking about bite-sized learning, learning on the go, etc. People really don't get an opportunity to implement what they have learned after they have learned the bite-sized pieces. 70% of the learning, 10, 20, 70 still holds good for the entire learning fraternity even today. How are we creating opportunities as a group to for them to implement that 70%? So, questions to the panelists.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Bala, you can. So very rightfully mentioned, because that is something that, when the HR budgets get decided, the first thing is, what is the impact? And the moment, one is obviously very right, hyper speed. I think we use the word hyper personalization of the learning experience, but not hyper speed. You cannot put learner in a jet set and ask them to run. Okay, so learning is always graded. That's my number one point. Number two is that, the more you scale up, the more, you move up the learning curve. Second is, I mentioned also that, at least in NCDX, we follow a model of very commonly, which is also followed in most organizations, the 70-20-10 of learning, right? And through our academy framework, we've built up a very strong governance mechanism of how you deliver the learning, because it is not just about the framework. It is very importantly, the implementation is very important, and that is where I think speed will never work. So that's all I had to mention here, because implementation is extremely important.
I think completely agree. So both in my previous organization and current, right? The first and foremost that we look at, yes, you can make knowledge available through a bite-sized learning, right? You can also make some of the real at application time, you can make some content available bite size. But end of the day, it has to be finally helping the individual directly apply on the skills on the job, right? So that's the key. When you're talking of bite size, the important piece is how is it going to help me at the time of application. So far as one is able to do that, then you're fine. This hyper speed that I talked about was really in terms of the responsibility on the learning department itself, because one has to do things at a real fast pace to get organization ready. So it's more from an organization perspective, not from a learner experience perspective. So idea is not to compromise on the learner experience. You still follow the 70-20-10, right? You ensure whatever we do in terms of knowledge transformation actually is resulting in a learning transfer, right?
Okay. And just to add on what Bala and Aditi said, if you really look at from a personalization perspective, you make it more relevant, right, to that individual, and it becomes more niche. While there is a skill building phase where you have to be a lot more immersive, and then there is an enforcement phase where the bite-learned learnings, to the point learning, when you really need the skill. I was brushing up my moderation skills just before this, right? So I was just doing that 5 minutes of video just before that in our Percipio platform, making sure that I do moderate well. So I think those are important things.
Yeah. What he did was learning in the flow of work.
Yeah, this is Hetal here. I represent a company called Human Edge, which is a space of wellness and well-being. Great discussion on learning. My simple question is, when you think about learning, I would quote Simon Sinek and say, start with why, right? So what's the trigger point, right? And we could probably obviously identify two of them. The first one is an assessment, which could be periodic in nature. Second one is feedback, which is after the task or the project has been performed. My question to the panelists is, what's been the more preferred mode? Would you want to have a sequence of assessments around the year, which helps to evaluate the individual at a particular level? Or do you rely more on feedback? Because I feel that the feedback being more of a lagging indicator, it might be too late. The individual might be demoralized by the time you come back to him from a feedback perspective. And one more question, if I don't mind. Ashok, I've been part of the IT industry, and I remember in my days when I was, for a short time in a tech role, for me, the learning opportunities were purely tech, right? The non-tech learning opportunities were not much, and that used to be a demotivating factor from a growth perspective. Has that changed in the IT organization, especially from HCL perspective?
So I'll quickly answer both. The second one first, maybe. The learning is more holistic now. In fact, we have a concept called job-based curriculum, which is more of a role-aligned curriculum, and it has 5 tenets: technical, behavioral, process, managerial, and domain. So you have to get certified on all these before you are ready for a role. What was the first question? Can you?
It's more about whether you depend more on assessments or
Yeah,
on
okay.
feedbacks.
So it has to be a combination of all the assessments. So there are 3 levels of assessment, rather 4 levels of assessment which we do. One is pre-assessment before starting the training to do a gap analysis. Then second is intermediate assessment during the learning itself to understand how the person is going and if we need to change the speed. Third is a final assessment at the end of the training. And fourth is a KPL3, click back to level 3, which is done 3 months after the learning. And that KPL3 assessment is done not from the trainee, but from his reporting manager. So that gives us a feedback whether the learning has been actually imbibed into the work which he is doing or not. I hope I answered your both the questions.
Thank you, Ashok. I know we are on 0 time buzzer. Probably one last question. Oh, a lot of them has to be answered then over the lunch then. One last question. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hello, am I audible?
Oh, somebody has started already. Sorry.
Should I continue?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So, hi, my name is Nidhi. I represent Yash Technologies. We are an IT services organization. So, my question is more directed to Ashok. So, we are experiencing that there are a lot of skills which are resurfacing. So, some of the skills that in yesteryears we used to call them obsolete, they are resurfacing with different combinations and becoming niche. As a L&D team or as the talent organization, how do we ensure that we have ways and strategies to predict? One, because at times even business leaders don't know how these things are going to shape up. And when we do, how do we make sure that we are on track? Because we were talking about not, giving people or not training people for the market, but for the organization. So keeping that in mind, how do we align business strategy with our learning strategies?
So I think niche is a highly misused word, I would say. It actually depends on demand supply. So whatever is in short supply becomes niche. It's nothing to do with whether it's latest or old. Anything which is even an old technology like maybe mainframes is niche today. If you want to hire a mainframe person, it's not available. But some of the projects might still need it. You might need a COBOL or a Fortran guy, which is a rarest commodity today, but you still need, and it's a niche skill. So I think it's more of demand supply gap rather than the age of the technology. That is one. Now, second question is on the predicting. So actually, the division for which I had the learning and development is called engineering and R&D services. So we actually work with the CTOs of the organization. So our customers are not the CIOs, our customers are the CTOs. So we have a cell within our organization which actually works only on looking at the technologies which are 5 years ahead. So for example, we started working on 5G sometime in 2018. And today we have a full-fledged offerings on 5G. And our teams are already working on 6G now. Our teams have started working on Metaverse maybe 2 years back. I think some of these things, you need to have a dedicated teams who are very dedicated to look towards the future and predict those technologies. So we have recently created one model and identified 10 such skill areas which will be required 10 years down the line. I cannot disclose those areas right now, but the method we have used is we have looked at some of the job postings of the very, very high technology companies like the Tesla, Google, Facebook, and all that through LinkedIn and various platforms, and looked at those job descriptions, identified those things out of that which are actually not something which are easily understood today. And based on those predictions, we have created a model and we identified 10 skills. And we are now going to create a subset of workforce which will be ready for those skill sets in next couple of years.
Yep. No, thank you, Ashok. Very, very relevant. And I can give you more if you come to our booth. I'll probably give you more details around this because we work with various Burning Glass to World Economic Forums about the future of skills and how we are kind of helping the company. So. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aditi. Thank you, Ashok. Thank you, Bala. Fantastic session. Great to host you all. Great insights. A lot of learning for me. I'm sure it was a lot of learning for you all. Looking forward to see you during the day. Thank you.